Welcome to episode 3.
Now on KPIX 5 and streaming on CBS News Bay Area, breaking news on the peninsula. Caltrain is involved in a fiery crash with a truck in San Bruno. Chopper 5 over that scene right now, and it is quite the big scene this afternoon.
And one in the front where the truck and the train collided, and one further down on the train, which we can only assume was diesel that was spread and caught fire.
But you can see the truck there that had that impact with that train lying on its side this afternoon with the boom sticking out there. And it appears when that impact happened.
We do know from Caltrain, they did tweet out that there was the driver of that vehicle has been transported to the hospital. Here is video from when this happened, and you can see the flames right there and flames underneath the train right there that had passengers on it around 10:30 this morning. We do know, though, from Caltrain that all the passengers have been escorted off of that train and are all safe.
So I was not able to be here when the fire was going. However, I was able to be here when the press conference happened, and I had my first time in the press pool.
At approximately 10:38, the southbound 506 struck some on-track equipment, including a crane, and this resulted in a fire which has been extinguished. We've got reports of 13 injuries, none of which appear to be life-threatening. Service is going to be running on the hour. Service will be running hourly until we get this all cleared up. But other than that, I'm open for any questions you may have.
Why was the equipment on the tracks?
Well, it's ultimately all the equipment should have been cleared to the tracks when trains come through. We've been running, we've been doing construction on the tracks throughout electrification. So that is under investigation. We'll get an answer as soon as we have it.
How does that happen if it should have been cleared?
Or what?
Beg pardon?
So just no time to stop? It just, I get the fact that it's not supposed to be there, but at the same time.
It's ultimately by the time the engineer was able to put eyes on this, it would likely be too late to be able to stop. So the specifics of what happened, we're going to need an investigation to figure out specifically.
Can you give us a breakdown on the injuries? People on the train versus off the train?
Passengers. I don't have that at this time. I've been told there are 13 individuals have been injured, including our engineer and the operator of some of the equipment. But again, we're hearing all of those injuries are not life-threatening.
Was it just the single vehicle on the tracks? Were there any other vehicles?
There appear to be two separate pieces of on-track equipment.
And I know this wasn't supposed to be on the track at this time. In what situation does this happen? Was there a big mistake somewhere?
Ultimately, we're going to need an investigation to figure that out.
Were people evacuated from the train? There's a ladder up there. Were people evacuated out the window? Approximately how many people were on the train at the time? And what about the fire on the tracks? Was that up here or was it farther down?
I believe that started the collision happened around Scott Street, and I imagine the fire continued out there to this point.
How far is Scott Street from here?
I don't have that measurement, I'm afraid.
And to my other two questions about the number of people on the train.
I don't have a full count on board, but everyone was evacuated. From what I understand, there was some smoke on board the passenger cars, so the trains were fully evacuated at that time.
That ladder was used for people to evacuate the train?
I'm not sure of that, but I get some confirmation.
Was there anyone in that vehicle that was in?
Is in the vehicle that was struck?
Yeah.
Yes, my understanding there was a contractor on board who's been taken to the hospital, but not with life-threatening injuries.
Can you tell us
what about the second vehicle?
I have confirmation that one of them is a crane.
What's the second vehicle?
My understanding is no, but I don't have confirmation.
So there's a station literally less than a quarter mile away. And the conductor didn't see the equipment. I mean, it's a straight shot, literally. So, I mean, do you know how fast the train was going at the point of the collision? Or kind of
I don't
typically?
have that at this time. The speed limit on the tracks is typically around 79 miles an hour, but this close to the station, it likely wasn't at full speed at the time. But ultimately, we're going to need an investigation to get to the bottom of
Sir, during the rest of the week, trains were indeed going on the single track. I'm a resident of the area. We saw the equipment on that southbound track, and we had seen trains going northbound and southbound on that other track. Do you have any explanation as to why that wasn't the case this day?
It's no, unfortunately, we're going to need an investigation to figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
To be clear, so you single tracked it?
Working on the tracks.
Beg pardon?
Was it a contracting company or was it Caltrain?
Yes, it was a contract.
Wait, I'm not clear on something. So, was the vehicle not supposed to be on the track, or are all the trains supposed to be single tracked on the other side? Do you sometimes do work with a vehicle on one side and you single track?
Sometimes, but my understanding is that is not the case in this case.
And is there any? Do you have any sort of electronics on Caltrain? That lets somebody who oversees the trains know there is an obstruction on the track.
It is, I don't believe so. It should have been covered by statute. Ultimately, we're going to need an investigation to determine what specifics.
So there's no communication between the train driver and somebody working on the tracks?
No, there are watchmen on site that are communicating with dispatch, but ultimately it is not yet clear where the breakdown took place.
So knowing that, are you surprised that this accident happened?
Yes, this was absolutely a surprise. We've been doing construction on this project since 2017. This is the first incident like this that's occurred.
First incident on this project, or first incident ever for Caltrain?
It's certainly the first incident like this in my time.
What is the speed limit for trains traveling through this residential area?
79 miles an hour. That's our whole.
So it's safe to assume that the train was going at least 70.
They're usually not at full speed, particularly this close to a station. It takes a while to accelerate.
Can you tell us the name of the contractor and the kind of work that was going on here?
It's I don't have the specifics of it. My understanding it was on the electrification project, and the work is being done by Balfour Paving.
And again, you said 13 injured. You've identified a contractor and a Caltrain employee who were two of those. So are we to assume the other 11 are passengers?
That is my understanding.
Were those passengers taken to the hospital, or were they treated on site and now they're okay?
From what I understand, four passengers were taken to the hospital. Everyone else was treated on site.
Can you talk about the impact on Caltrain for the rest of the evening? When will this be cleared up? How is this going to impact service for the rest of the day?
Well, like I said, we're going to be running service hourly going forward until this is fully cleared. That's all going to be local, so we're not going to have any baby bullet service today until this is all cleared.
So
Who
what does that
exactly
mean?
is running the
You're single
investigation besides you guys? Are there other agencies, federal agencies involved in it, local agencies? Who's conducting the investigation?
It's I would imagine. I mean, certainly I would imagine the NTSB is going to get involved at some point if they aren't already. But we're also working with San Bruno Fire and the transit.
And you said 4 passengers to the hospital plus the 2 employees. Which hospital do we know?
I don't have that information.
And did you say how many people you think were totally on the train at the time?
I don't have that count yet. I'll try to get that for you.
What's a typical train? How many passengers are on this typical train this time of week?
Honestly, these days it's sort of back and forth. But let me try to get you an exact count.
So all things considered, I mean, considering what we're looking at here, this could be a lot worse. Talk about it.
Ultimately the fact that no one has a life and threatening injuries is a good thing. Ultimately, Caltrain is very concerned about both our passengers and our conductors, and we try to keep a safe running at all times. So this is not exactly a happy day, but we're glad that it is not worse than it is.
What happens to this train? Is it just going to sit here?
It's until it will likely be here until the tracks are fully cleared, and then we can be sure that the train can move safely.
Where were well, maybe you don't know this, but the passengers on the train, where did they go?
I don't know that, but I can get an answer.
Your name again, spell it please.
Dan Lieberman, that's Lieberman.
And you are the spokesperson for Caltrain?
Yes.
Are you going to have an update again before our news at 5 to answer some of these
I
questions?
will certainly try. Let me get back in there and squeeze some answers out of some folks.
Dan, you said there was a fire involved. Do you know where that started?
It's where that started. It's not specifically, I would imagine, very close to the point of impact, but let me get you a better answer.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Sorry for a lot of maybes. Let me get back in there and get some more
Last
for you.
question. Scott Street, we're told, is 2 blocks down. So does that mean that the actual collision you said at Scott happened 2 blocks down, and the train pushed this vehicle all the way down here?
That's what I got earlier, but let me confirm that may have been a rough estimate.
Well, it must have been going at full speed for this area.
Let me find some more answers. I'll be back. Thank you, John.
Thank you. All right, so it is 4:40. Two quick updates. Number one, they are patching the hole in the fence here on Huntington where they were accessing the train. They did not evacuate passengers out of that little hole. Ironically, this very location is the site of where there was once a temporary San Bruno station. That station was in place while they were constructing the bypass over the streets to eliminate the grade crossings. So they evacuated the passengers off of that platform, and kudos to them for getting it done safely. The second update being, we have not had any trains passing through the area since this incident occurred at around 10:30 in the morning. In place of the trains that were supposed to run through here, they have been turning trains around at both South San Francisco and Millbrae stations. So trains have been stopped there at those two stations, and Samtrans has been running bus bridges in between those two stations. So, with all of that out of the way, I believe that's what they're going to do for the rest of the evening. Okay, so welcome to, indeed, a closer look. In the process of filming this, you will be hearing the multiple alarm bells going off in the cab of 919, as well as the continual radio squawk that is happening on the dispatch. So some things to point out right off. That locomotive is it's got some pretty good burn marks on it. Take a look at that rear Blomberg truck. It is not supposed to be like that. I'll go ahead and show you a closer look at it right now. That is a wheel that is partially on the ground. Time for my total impromptu diagnosis of what happened. So, earlier this week, Caltrain was running catenary installation operations through this stretch of track. There was a crossover just north of the 380 overpass, and there was a crossover just before the Millbrae station. During this week, Caltrain was single tracking operations. They were single tracking operations in this such manner. Trains were running in both directions on the northbound track. On the southbound track, there were two maintenance trucks that were running up and down the route. I'm not exactly sure what kind of services they were doing in regards to the electrification process, but I will say that right here is where Caltrain has been storing a number of catenary poles and other equipment. So they may have been loading equipment right here onto trains and everything. So during the entire week, everything had been going on without incident. And there you can see some Federal Railroad Administration as well as California Public Utility Commission workers. So, anyways, in regards to this train, this was Caltrain 506, the local service. Now, the caveat was that this train did not stop at the San Bruno station. This train was to express to the Millbrae station. The speed limit on this section of track, at least at the flyover, the grade separation, at which the station is located, the speed limit there is 65 miles an hour. Coming off of that flyover and going onto this section of straight track that essentially leads right to the Millbrae station is 79 miles an hour. So, for perspective, that train was hauling right then and there, right around that curve, and for some reason that is not known at this time, those two maintenance trucks, which had been on the southbound track the entire time, they were still on that section of track, all while there was a train moving on that track. I estimate that the distance where the trucks were visible and where the train got to was maybe 250 or 300 yards. When going at speed, there is very little time to react to anything on this section of track right here. The engineer did their best and slowed the train down as much as possible by slamming on the emergency brakes. It was not enough to prevent impact, but it was enough to save the lives of countless people. So this KSL begs the question, when is the train going to be moved? Well, it's not. For at least 2 days, because you see that guy right there, the one in the orange vest, and the one who's now in the middle, and now the one who's now over on the left of everything. That is a representative from the Federal Railroad Administration. That is a Fed. They are going to be investigating this. The NTSB is also going to be investigating this, so the train will not move, the wreckage will not move. This isn't just a mess, this is now a federal mess. So there are two maintenance vehicles that were involved with this collision. One of them is on the left side of the second passenger coach. The other is at the front of the train. Currently propping up the front of Caltrain locomotive 919. The driver of what I will assume was the truck at the front of the train at this time, they survived and they were taken to the hospital. It is truly miraculous that there were no fatalities in this incident, especially given the speed of the train through that curve and down this straightaway. This is one of the most shocking things I have ever seen.